I don't think there's a celebrity psychology that we've gotten more wrong than Beyonce's. We are told that Beyonce is the blueprint for the woman who has it all, that she made it to the top on her own terms, that she is in this powerful power couple relationship. What if I told you that the truth is so much darker, that Beyonce's life has never been on her own terms? What if I told you that she had been handed from one man's control into the hands of another, and that her power built the same patriarchal system that she is supposed to oppose? And that she might not just be the victim, but also the enforcer. Do I got a powerful one for you today? We're going to be exploring Beyonce's childhood, the relationship with her father, her relationship with Jay-Z. We're going to see how far deep this goes. So grab your drink, grab a snack, buckle up. And before we get too far into it, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Julie Tice, where we are breaking down the psychology of celebrities so that we better understand ourselves and others. This video is part 2 in my Carter series. So if you haven't watched Jay-Z's video, go watch it because it's important to understand Beyonce's psychology. And as I said in that video, as I will say in this video, everything in here is alleged, and I'm a compulsive liar because as I have gone to do my research, and we will get into this in Beyonce's video, but it seems that the Carters are not very comfortable with a narrative that is different than theirs being put out there. And they have gone, allegedly, through extreme lengths of retracting stories, of getting things removed. So also, if you haven't watched the Jay-Z video, you better watch it while it's still up. But today we're going to be looking at verified sources, interviews that Beyonce herself has done. We're going to be breaking down lyrics, memoirs that have been written, and we'll explore the blind items and alleged rumors. And I will be here as your guide to be breaking down the psychology along the way, because Beyonce's story is sad. It's sad, it's dark. And with every single one of these celebrities that I break down, there always is the question is like, who would they have been without this trauma? And I guess that's a question that we all have for ourselves too. There's grief in that when we ask ourselves that, like, who would I be without this? But of course, there's also strength. Many people talk about their life, oh, I'm so glad I went through that because I wouldn't be who I am today. So we'll look through Beyonce, and the truth to that question is we won't ever know, but we do know how she ended up here. So let's start. We're going to dive into her childhood. Beyonce Giselle Knowles grew up in a managed world. From a young age, her father, Mathew Knowles, essentially groomed her for stardom with a drill sergeant intensity. And before she had her mega successful solo career, there was Destiny's Child. And in this era, her dad was putting down the hammer. There are reports, and also Beyonce has done interviews where she talked about how her dad would make them run around the track, which was 3.5 miles, singing their songs. They even said that the girls in Destiny's Child nicknamed him Joe Jackson after Michael Jackson's father, which is really interesting because what we know about Michael Jackson's father is that he was an abusive, angry man willing to do whatever it takes for his sons to get to the top. Joe Jackson was also said to be extremely controlling, and those rumors ring true with Mathew Knowles as well. This regimen of having Beyonce run on the treadmill, run on the track, singing her songs. The thing is though, is it worked. And Beyonce became this golden child. She was the obedient star. She was the daughter who hit every single high note. She became perfection. And in so many ways we can say, wow, this absolutely boosted her career. After all, she became Beyonce. But what was the cost of that? What was the price of perfection? Beyonce was the golden child in their family, and a lot of reports say that Solange, her younger sister, was the forgotten child, the scapegoat. Her parents were so heavily focused on Beyonce's career, they focused all of their attention on her, and Solange really got left behind and forgotten. And we talked about this in my Kim video, where I said that there's actually nothing fun about being the golden child. I shared with you guys in that video that I was the golden child inside of my family. And a lot of you guys shared with me in the comments how you felt that too. And I think about this as I was doing the research on Beyonce, and as she talks about essentially how she's dying for this perfection. And we will get into this later, but you'll see it in like everything that she has put out there. There is such a need to control that narrative, and we're going to get into that when it comes to her relationship with Jay-Z. And this isn't an accident. Being the golden child, you are caged by the same things that you are praised for. And I personally have a different relationship with success now, but when I was younger, I think about being in college where I was absolutely killing myself to be perfect. And I had the accolades to show it. I was the star student. I had the most volunteer hours out of any student athlete in the state of Montana. I was a student athlete. I was on the dance team. I was obsessed with winning these awards. And I remember one time a kid came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I know you. You're Julie. You're like the perfect one." And I remember I was so exhausted that day, and I just like blurted out and I was like, "Yeah, and I'm killing myself to do it." Which is so odd because you would think it's like, oh, that should be the ultimate praise. That is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be the perfect one. But for a golden child, being the perfect one, it doesn't come at, I'm so proud of myself that I've achieved here. It's like, I can't even at all fall from grace because I was taught that love was conditional. And that's where we end up getting these kids that turn into adults that are highly anxious, are really prone to depression, are really prone to a low self-esteem because they are killing themselves for that conditional love. And what that dynamic does with a golden child and sibling, and this is something I experienced in my family, is you can't also be close with your sibling. There is a triangulation that is happening inside of that. These children are born usually from narcissistic parents. So while you feel completely alone, killing yourself to get the approval of your parents, you have also the forgotten sibling there, angry at you, there's jealousy there. And I remember at points I'm like, yeah, I have all of these awards, all these accolades to show for it. There's nothing to be jealous. I'm killing myself for this. There is no happiness in this. And this isn't just my story. This is psychological research. We have textbooks that say the same patterns that happen. So many of you guys write into the comments saying, this is exactly your story. So we look at celebrities like Beyonce and Kim Kardashian. They were the golden child and they are hyper successful. They are the ultimate perfectionist, not a hair out of place, not a wrong word spoken. Why? Because they have to. They're wired for survival. And this comes from an interview of Beyonce speaking about her father. And as I said, this shit is textbook because listen to it from that dynamic of what you know now of a golden child and them killing themselves for perfection. She says, "I remember running as hard as I could and my dad knew that I needed his approval. And I think my father wouldn't give it to me because he kept pushing me and kept pushing me and kept pushing me. Every time my dad pushed me, I got better and stronger." She goes on to say, "I'm still trying to learn that I don't have to kill myself to be so hard on myself. I don't want to never be satisfied. I don't think that's a healthy way to live. I'm feeling very empty because of my relationship with my dad, and I'm so fragile at this point, and I feel like my soul has been tarnished." So sometimes I do these videos and people say, there's no way you could possibly know that. If you don't want to take my word for it, take her word for it. Because inside the child star was a little girl learning how to wear a mask. Beyonce became the people pleaser extraordinaire, and it will be argued that she brought this into her relationship with Jay-Z, as do so many of us. And if you've ever wondered, why do I keep repeating the same lessons? Well, number one, we will keep repeating the same lessons until we heal it. The problem with the psyche is we get hurt in our childhood and we look for the same type of person so that subconsciously we can heal that. So if we place ourselves in that same situation, the subconscious thinks, okay, this is an untreated wound. I'm going to go back and we're going to heal it. Except what happens is we are just doomed to repeat the same cycle. There isn't healing, and you can't heal in the same place that made you sick. I will say that again, because don't we just love to think that we can? Don't we just say, oh, no, it's going to be different this time around. I'm going to pick the same person with a different face, and this time it's going to be solved. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. And it's worth stating too, her father was said to be very controlling. Her mother was involved in her life, but her mother was also this stage mom. She was making all of her costumes. She wanted that fame too. All of this reminds me very much of like Britney Spears' parents. You have Kim Kardashian's parents. Like these people are pretty connected. So we have her father, Matthew's iron grip on her, and we have her mother's obsession with presentation. And that perfectionistic ideal would both propel Beyonce to greatness and also haunt her psyche for decades to come. And how we talk about on this channel is that we repeat cycles. You will see this in Beyonce's story a lot, which I think is fascinating because Beyonce is really sold as this feminist icon, as someone who also, as a Black woman, has transcended so many barriers that she was supposed to be beholden to. But in other ways, especially when it comes to relationships, she repeated the same cycle. And you'll see with the control that she had over her father, she was really almost just passed off from one handler to the next. So according to Beyonce and Jay-Z, they started dating when Beyonce was 19. But even Beyonce spoke about this in an interview that she did with Oprah, where she says, oh, we were just friends first and we would just talk on the phones, which it's giving grooming. But there was also photos of Beyonce and Jay-Z where Beyonce was 16. And this would mean at that time, Jay-Z was 28. So when they started dating though, Beyonce was 19, Jay-Z was 31. And speaking about an age gap relationship is a little controversial because there are plenty of people who are in age gap relationships and they say, my relationship's super healthy, what's the problem? The problem is honestly, truly less about what the age gap is. There is a big difference between a 30-year-old dating a 40-year-old and a just turned adult which, let's be real, were you even acting even close to being an adult when you were 18? So there's a huge difference between an 18 and a 31-year-old age gap versus someone who is 31 and 41 or even 41 and 51. And the reason why really comes down to life experience. And at 18, when you are just getting out of the teenage phase, you don't have that life experience. And this is why so many people who do end up in an age gap relationship when they are really young do report being controlled. They often do get into abusive relationships because that life experience that their partner has can so easily be weaponized against you. They can easily say, you don't actually know what a relationship looks like. I know. And a lot of the times these people will take on this mentorship role, which ends up just giving you an icky feeling. And this is heavily integrated into Beyonce and Jay-Z's relationship. She has given a toast before where she literally credits Jay-Z for making her into a woman. And some people said, they're like, oh, she's just praising her man. But it's a little different. When she started dating him, she was still a teenager. It depends what your adulthood is, but scientifically, frontal lobe is not developed. And the thing with Jay-Z and Beyonce's relationship is we're not just looking at an age gap. We are looking at all of the different factors that contribute to this relationship. Maybe there's something a little off. Maybe there's something behind just what they have put out there. Because what we have, at least inside of Jay-Z and Beyonce's relationship and their age gap, is psychological leverage. This was Beyonce's first love. This was a man that she idolized. Beyonce, who in her childhood had been sheltered and chaperoned by her mom and dad, was then passed off to Jay-Z. And there are reports too that Beyonce's mom and her dad really were pushing for this relationship hard. They were saying, this is going to boost your career. And I mean, it definitely did, but we have to think about too, the love of a parent. And it doesn't come as a shock to me knowing how Beyonce's dad was with her career and making her run laps and singing the songs, and how her mom was such a stage mom as well. Of course, it's not surprising, but there is some heartbreak and grief in that how much did they do at the expense of their daughter? How much for this fame did they push her into the arms of anyone? And Jay-Z stepped into this mentorship role. Reminder, these two are supposed to be this power couple. When I think of power couple, he was like the king of hip hop. She was the queen of R&B. And they're supposed to be equals. They're supposed to both have power. That's kind of the thing, right? Power couple. They're both powerful. They're both leading the charge together. But I can't even believe we got to this point because there is such that power imbalance between them. And I know you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with, him teaching her stuff as an older man and wanting to show her the world? Well, because we're looking at the bigger pattern. And that's what I want you to be able to do in your own relationships as we move outside of this breakdown deep dive of Beyonce and Jay-Z. It's what else is going on in the patterns in your life? Because this is how abusers get you. They will do something and they will rationalize their behavior. They will rationalize it as, I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying to protect you. I was really angry. I was just mad. I love you so much. That's why I'm caring for you, right? All of those rationalizations, I know you've heard them before. And of course, we want to believe them. And we look at them alongside with what we're seeing with Jay-Z and Beyonce. And this is why I think doing these breakdowns of celebrity psychology is so fascinating, because almost in the same way, or not almost, exactly in the same way that we get manipulated and abused by abusers in our own life, we fall for those rationalizations as well. Well, isn't Beyonce just thanking him for helping her become a woman because she loves her man? Isn't he just, helping her get to the next steps because he cares about her? I'm sure that is how he has rationalized her control. But beyond this, there have been reports. There was Mr. Uncle Ron, and we are going to dive in deeper into Uncle Ron because that shit is dark. More on him later, but he made a video where he essentially said that Jay-Z is extremely possessive and controlling over Beyonce. In his alleged liar reports, right? We're just playing make-believe right now, of what he said, which was totally a lie. But he also said that Beyonce was on drugs in Jay-Z's control.
Yeah, Beyonce's on drugs. She's been on them for a long time, and you keep her that way.
And I know that's a really serious allegation, and that's why I said it's an allegation, it's a lie. I'm a liar over here, we're all liars on this channel. But is it out of the realm of possibility, especially when we've learned what Diddy did to Cassie? That's exactly what was happening with her. And just put a little pin in that story real quick. Like I said, we're diving all deep into it and it gets dark. We're going to get into who Uncle Ron is and what happened to him. But for this, in the same way that I said, your abuser will sit there and they will rationalize what they have done to you, their control, and they will always hide it under the guise of, but I love you so much, I care about you so much. This is why abuse that happens inside of relationships is so complex. That's why we talk about it so much on this channel. And my hope is that it gives you guys the nuanced perspective for us to see. But it's not just our abusers that rationalize it, because usually what came before an abuser who rationalizes it is us learning from a parent who rationalized their behavior. And when we grow up around that, we learn to tolerate that abuse very well. And I think back to Jay-Z's video where we watched Beyonce in the elevator and how stoic she was, how she did not move. And this is what I want to say to you out there. If you came from an abusive childhood, an abusive family dynamic, and you found yourself in the same way, and I talk to many women like this, and I have been this woman as well, where you at some point have to rationalize what's been done to you, and you say, well, I'm so strong. I am so strong and I can deal with it. And what I want to say to you out there, if you are the strong woman who can deal with it, is just because you tolerate abuse well does not mean that you should. And I think about this with Beyonce in the elevator. She's seeing this violence go down. Yes, it was her sister attacking Jay-Z. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say her sister was probably very valid, because her sister, who has had no other reports of being violent, was extremely violent to her husband, probably protecting Beyonce. And on the other hand, Jay-Z has a long history where he talked about that in his videos of being violent, of hurting people physically. And when we talk about, we always go back to repeating these cycles. Beyonce sings in one of her songs, "My daddy warned me about men like you." And to me, this is drawing a direct parallel between Jay-Z's behavior and her father. And it shows self-awareness that she knew she married a man that had the same echoes of flaws as her dad did. And yet she stayed. The golden child who could never disappoint her father became the woman who would always stand by her man. And I think this does come from her perfectionism as well. And we have to look at this when we're looking at the dark psychology of Beyonce, because this makes up so much of her psyche. And I think it's important that we talk about a darker side of perfectionism, because we think that, if you're a high performer and you're succeeding, then it must be good. And especially in a capitalistic society, all of that high achieving is rewarded. And maybe there are worse things. Like, you're not the drug addict on the street, but what is going on internally? And just because you are living in a mansion, we can't be so naive to say that you're not experiencing any pain, because especially for Beyonce, imperfections are her greatest fear. This isn't just, I want to be perfect and look right because it feels good. This is literally, if I don't do this, remember, she learned that love was conditional. And I'm sure she did not just get that lesson from her father and her mother, but then my guess is also that she gets it from Jay-Z. I really think that Beyonce developed almost a pathological perfectionism as a response to some of her trauma. And again, for all perfectionists, this really is a false sense of control. We think that this is going to shield us from the fear that we deeply have of not being good enough, but really we learn how, if you are a perfectionist, if you've ever struggled with this, how all-consuming it is. Once again, it is your cage. And Beyonce takes her perfectionism to an extreme. You will almost never see her do just a candid interview. There aren't a lot of candid photos. Everything is so meticulously controlled. And even, we're gonna get into this, when she finally released Lemonade, which talks about the betrayal that she faced from Jay-Z, this was still like, she wasn't taking an interview where she had to sit down and have to hear from an interviewer to ask her, well, why did you stay? Why didn't you leave? Asking her hard-hitting questions. She put out a narrative that she could control. And this perfectionism has given her an insane work ethic. There's a quote that's like, you have just as many hours in a day as Beyonce. But y'all, Beyonce's killing herself in these hours. Like, there are reports of her being in a studio for days, having to, redo a 2-minute video. I watched one interview, which was someone that she was working with talking about how, he wanted to take a break, and they were literally in the studio for 3 days, and they were taking all of these like 5-hour energy shots, like probably on the brink of giving themselves a heart attack, because Beyonce just kept being like, no, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. We got to keep doing this right, which is admirable. I admire a woman with a strong work ethic. As Kim Kardashian would say, like, no one wants to work these days. Get your fucking ass up and work. Beyonce, she be working, again, though, at what cost? And it's like, and what is driving you? I have talked about this when we've broken down narcissism. I'm pretty sure I shared this in my Joe Goldberg episode, where we talk about narcissists. And I'm not saying Beyonce is a narcissist in this video, but a narcissist pathology, when they are going towards something, they say, this is in Malignant Self-Love by Sam Vaknin, and he says, the reason why I hate people so much is because when you are going towards a goal, you are going towards it. We are moving in the same direction, except I am running away from something. And that's really how I do see that in Beyonce, though. It's not this pursuit of like, I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and I'm full, which you can get there. Like I said, I used to have a completely different relationship with success. I'm not saying for people never to have success or to want better for yourself. I still want better. But the difference is I've been able to heal from a point where especially when I was in college, it was this, I am running away from something. I'm running away from my parents. I'm running away from this constant feeling of I'm not enoughness. And it looks like you're moving in the same direction. It looks like you should be successful. And I've worked with clients like this who, they are beautiful, they are successful, they are in their PhDs, they have multiple PhDs even, but they sit with me and they say, I'm so miserable. I am so unhappy. They look like they have everything. And that is the psychology that makes up a narcissist. But the reason why that psychology makes up a narcissist is because that is from a trauma wound. That is from the pain. We think of narcissists as these big, overt, self-confident people. All of narcissism it's a shame-based disorder. And so I'm not saying if this is you have narcissism, if you are running away from something, but what that line of thinking shows is that your pursuit for what you want is coming from pain. And I see this in Beyonce. And what's especially interesting with Beyonce that maybe we won't as normal people is the perception that everyone else has bought. That on the outside, it does look like a Black woman artist who answers to no one, who has rised above all of her circumstances, a feminist icon. But on the other side of it, we look at, is that perception that we have thought about Beyonce, how close is it to the truth? And is it this close to the truth, or is it this close to the truth, because like we talked about, that perfectionism becomes a cage. And Beyonce herself even said, I'm not able to be human, which is interesting because inside we see that she is struggling with the very same things that she puts in her music. In the song Pretty Hurts, her opening line is, perfection is the disease of a nation. So she's calling out beauty standards, beauty culture, right? A culture who pressures women to be flawless. And I guess who else would know better than Beyonce? She sings Pretty Hurts and you can feel that she means it. And going back again to what she said about her dad, every time my dad pushed me, I got better. I'm still trying to learn that I don't have to be so hard on myself. What she is articulating there is a trauma response. And this is really powerful for you listening to learn, because what we have here is we can see that so many of Beyonce's actions, she has the voice of her father there still pushing her. And this is what I work with my clients on. And if, by the way, you're ever listening to these videos and you say, oh my gosh, that is me, or I want to deep dive, I need analysis on me, girl, you are hitting the nail on the head. I do offer one-on-one sessions and you can book that down below. But I see this in my clients all the time. Number one, they think that that voice in their head that is running their life is true, when really, just like how we're seeing in Beyonce, this is a voice of your parents. And the sad thing is, your parents also had shitty software. I call it software. I call it a blueprint. This is also why I created the healing blueprint, for you to rewire some of that blueprint, which you can also download in the show notes. But I created it for you to create a new blueprint, because what happens is our parents were given a shitty blueprint, their shitty software from their parents, and they pass that on to us. It uploads into us, and that becomes our hard drive. We take this blueprint and we're like, this must be how life is. And we don't realize how not in charge we are of our thoughts and our beliefs. I love the quote that says, don't believe everything you think, because not all thoughts are real. And so many of us are letting the thoughts that have been implanted onto us from abusers, from people with a shitty blueprint, and we take that as fact. And we take that as, oh my gosh, like I have to act this way. Everything is under pressure for me just to survive. And I am here to tell you listening that you have suffered enough. If Beyonce was my client, she was sitting here, I would say you've suffered enough. And I know some people are going to say, and don't worry, we are going to get into this, because people want to say, well, I don't think Beyonce is so innocent herself. What if Beyonce isn't such a victim? Well, that's a great question, and we are going to get into that. But first, let's look at this for a second. If what I'm saying is true, if there really is this darkness that Beyonce has been subjected to her whole life, with control of her father into the hands of a controlling partner, how is she coping through this? Well, I believe that this is where her alter ego, Sasha Fierce, comes into play. So she has talked about Sasha Fierce, and this is like her stage persona, right? That she like flips into this like very confident, wild, fiery, that this persona lets her express those things like anger and be also different. She gets to be the more housewife, submissive, quiet wife Beyonce, and then Sasha Fierce is this hard-hitting, takes no bullshit, commands the stage type of woman, which I just think is like, there is a fascinating component to this. Number one, because I have heard other celebrities talk about this before. I've heard Miley Cyrus talk about this like level of dissociation that she has to go on when she goes on tour. I've heard Tate McRae talk about this. Her alter ego is Tatiana. And of course, like you could say, all artists do this. It's just part of a persona. But I think of this in the context in relation to dissociative identity disorder. Before it was named dissociative identity disorder, this is what you would have known as multiple personality disorders. And obviously it is different, because with DID, dissociative identity disorder, people aren't conscious of this split, but we do see it in people usually who have had severe childhood trauma. And the origin point of this disorder is that when the psyche, that's why we like see it develop in children, is because when you're being abused, how does the psyche handle that? How does it handle it? And in some people, it literally splits, so that one personality is having the abuse, the one that is not you, that is not the fully conscious Julie, let's say, that like walks in life. Or let's say we have Beyonce, and then we have Sasha Fierce. So Beyonce doesn't have to take on that, and then an alter ego takes on that abuse. This is what we see in DID. And again, this split isn't then conscious because it allows the person for that trauma to stay suppressed and to be pushed under. DID is really fascinating, of reports of, sometimes it's one personality, sometimes it's 14, of reports of these people having like different chemical makeup in their bodies, different like hormones that fire off. Some of them can speak different languages or speak in different, at least like accents and dialects, voices. It's really fascinating. But this Sasha Fierce persona, I can't help but make some kind of correlation. And I'm not saying that Beyonce has dissociative identity disorder, because she's obviously conscious of this. But it is interesting how she is, at least like consciously, she is making a separateness in it. And psychologists even say with this, when it's not even DID, but when you are constantly putting on a mask, how do you draw that line of where does Sasha Fierce end? Where does this person begin? And psychologists also say that people create these personas under extreme stress or under trauma. And I feel this way for Beyonce is that it is a way to compartmentalize conflicting parts of yourself. And I think about this in relationship to cognitive dissonance. And with Beyonce, this actually makes perfect sense. I think I'm like stumbling into a theory and a point as I say this. So with cognitive dissonance, our brains don't like holding two conflicting things. So it actually wouldn't make sense for Beyonce to be this feminist icon while also staying with a man who, at the very least, emotionally abused her. I won't say anything about physical. We won't even talk about the rumors of control or like the drugging or any of the extreme stuff that I don't have proof on. But what we do have proof is that my belief, and I mean, let's just make no mistake, chronically cheating on someone, especially in a relationship where a power dynamic exists, is emotional abuse. So it actually wouldn't make sense for someone who is this feminist icon who believes that who runs the world, girls, would stay in this relationship. So I almost I want to know what you guys think in the comments about Sasha Fierce. I think I would love to personally sit down with Beyonce and really explore this. But right now, what we have is theories. But I almost think of Sasha Fierce also as being a coping mechanism to the cognitive dissonance that she is feeling, because it's almost like, well, if this empowerment piece exists in her, but it's not all of her, if it's someone else, then she can compartmentalize conflicting beliefs and feelings that she even holds within herself without having to be all like, okay, these two things don't make sense. But a lot of times what people do also with cognitive dissonance then is that's where the rationalization of the partner comes in. You say, oh, well, this person does love me, they care about me, yada, yada. And even more interesting, adding on to that, is Beyonce at one point said that if she ever met Sasha Fierce in real life, that she would not like her, which again, I think goes into this cognitive dissonance of that maybe the things that Sasha Fierce represents, that it lets her explore some of her anger, that she has guilt and hatred towards someone who maybe feels more. It's actually a little fascinating to me. But I think ultimately what Sasha Fierce highlights is emotional fragmentation. So I wonder, is the mask starting to crack? Well, this is where we get into more about Uncle Ron. So who is Uncle Ron? Well, he was a known bodyguard to some of these celebrities. He allegedly, according to him, worked for Beyonce and Jay-Z. He also worked for Diddy. So he was a bodyguard among some of these top high-profile people that we keep seeing in scandals. And after he made videos, what some would maybe call whistleblowing.
We're talking about Jay-Z and Beyonce. Oh, some toes will curl for sure. But hey, the truth is the truth, whether you believe it or not. Yeah, I'm under investigation. So that's why I'm telling.
Or exposing Jay-Z and Beyonce and some of these other celebrities. He died of ammonia. And actually, he died within 24 hours of him releasing a video where he alleged, claimed, lied, and actually, my personal opinion, that Jay-Z and Diddy were involved in the murder of Biggie Smalls. So, wow, that timing is really crazy. What bad luck someone could have. And with that said, I just want it to be known that I am not depressed. I am not anxious. I am not sick. And if it ever comes out that I have mysteriously unalived myself, I didn't. Okay? I didn't do that. And thankfully in this video, I'm not saying anything is real. It's all alleged. I am scarily just the messenger, and we're just diving into, you know, we do psychology breakdowns. I'm talking about the psychology of a compulsive liar, and that's what we're talking here. So what Uncle Ron said is that Beyonce and Jay-Z had a very controlling relationship, that it was all for business purposes.
Remember, your relationship was a business relationship, financial, to get to the top, to become billionaires. There's no love there. See, what's done in the dark will definitely come in the light. Keep your threats up. I'm here today, and what I got to say, I'm gonna say it. So don't make idle threats to me. I say I ain't Biggie.
And then he passed away, literally within days of saying this. So who knows? Super, super poor timing on that illness and ammonia. I am fully healthy. I don't even have a cold. Just want to throw that out there. And beyond Uncle Ron, I do want to say is there have been, like, as I've done my research, there was so many different times where it was like a story would come out, not even just about this, like sometimes it was like just unflattering photos of, like, Beyonce didn't like the photos that were circulating about her in the Super Bowl, or sometimes it would be a story about Jay-Z cheating, whatever it was, but that they worked really hard. The elevator video of Solange kicking the shit out of Jay-Z in the elevator, they work really hard of getting shit scraped down. Like, they have teams, they have cease and desist allegedly that are like, take this down. They don't like bad stuff being out there about them. And I mean, I guess, like, who would, especially like if it's not true. But I mean, they're pretty quick to be on like shit that they don't want out there. And things do get pulled, and it's like even been said that, you know, like the media won't go against them. Big media has been trained and known that they're not going to write a bad story about Jay-Z and Beyonce, and that when they have, the story gets pulled. And this all comes around, again, controlling the narrative. And maybe it's, you know, has some evil roots of like, we are like these top elites, right? It can get like conspiratorial, and people say that, and I understand the argument behind it, but it could also be like going back to psychological. It's like this fear that Beyonce clearly has of everything needing to be perfect and having to control the narrative. And I did talk about the Lemonade album in Jay-Z's video, but I want to dive into it more on Beyonce's perspective. Because what we had with the Lemonade album is it's supposed to be this like empowerment anthem. In my opinion, what it really is it's an anthem of codependency, and she stayed. And how obviously they rationalize it is like, at the end, she is standing by her man. But how I see it at the end, girl, you never left the cage. You never broke these cycles that you say that you are. And I wonder how even staying in the relationship, it's part of her perfectionism. And I know I felt that when my last relationship ended. I was in a very public relationship, and I remember feeling like so embarrassed and so like it ate at my perfectionism. I felt like I failed. It did feel like a failure. And there are obviously, of course, in so many, like I had to fight against so many of my old wiring of things that I've tolerated in my childhood, right? Like just because you can tolerate abuse well doesn't mean that you should. And I had to go against so much of that. And I'm not going to lie, there's part of me that wanted to stay, and that I felt like I would have been able to say like, well, I won and we worked it out and it's so much better. And I think about that with Beyonce, that there is that tone inside of Lemonade that it's like, I won and we overcame. And this is just a reminder to you guys that here are some indicators that do not equate a healthy relationship. The amount of time you've been with someone, if you're married, if you got the ring, if you're pregnant, if you had the baby, like all these things. I think it's like, I get why we do it. I don't mean to be like a hater in every single aspect, but it's like when people are like immediately, it's like someone's, you know, having a baby and they go, congratulations, someone's getting married. They say, congratulations, someone's celebrating an anniversary, congratulations. Like I get, it's like, yes, I'm not saying don't do this, but I just think about how blindly we also do it, and that we think that it's like these are always milestones, that these always mean a healthy relationship, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not like the indicator that things are super healthy, and just because she stayed, it doesn't mean that it doesn't actually mean that she won. And that was something I had to come to terms with. I'm like, actually, like, staying is such a betrayal of myself. And I am trying to break these cycles, and I have to be honest with myself, but there is a part of me that I don't want to. And I do think it's like, if I think about the times where I stayed in an unhealthy relationship and I think about the times where I left, staying was easier. It's not in the long term, because you really do end up losing yourself, where you don't recognize yourself, you play small, your light completely dwindles. And in that way, it's like, no, it's not easier. But that initial point, like leaving is hard. It feels like you're dying. And I know when you're in an unhealthy relationship, that shit can also feel like you're dying. But I mean, that's what a trauma bond is. And this is what Beyonce's album rings to me. It is of a trauma bond. And she says in that, it's like that she goes back to her tormentor. Girl, you are describing a trauma bond where you are saying, like, yes, you are the person who hurt me, but you're the only one who can make it better. That's why, like, a classic line of a trauma bond is, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. I do think it takes more strength to leave than it does to stay. And if you are ever someone who has walked away from a relationship, like, I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of you, because I know the pain and the fear and how hard it is. And that, especially, like, you have an abuser like Jay-Z, allegedly. It's like, he has power, but it doesn't even matter about them. You guys have dealt with it, where there's such things as financial abuse and being completely isolated, and that the abuse makes you lose yourself. It makes you dim your light. It makes you forget what your strength is. It is hard to leave. But yet we say Beyonce, oh, claps, claps, claps for the power couple. They did it. They won. Where? So I think we can see that Beyonce's story is sad. There's a lot of trauma here. There's darkness here. But a question is, how complicit, if at all, is Beyonce in any of this? Honestly, I don't know. So I'm going to let you guys draw some conclusions from other parts that I found, because while I can empathize with Beyonce, I do think she is a victim, and a hidden victim at that. But a few things that are contradictory is, number one, let's look at the selective feminism. So she has songs like Who Run the World, Girls, which is not the case. She is surrounded by these men that are running this world. I'll just use Diddy as an example, that can get away with doing horrific crimes and really be protected by their money, their power, their charisma, and that shit went on for years. Why I say it's selective feminism is Beyonce has so many songs that are about women being empowered. She also has never been an actual voice for women. We think that she is, right? We say that on the outside, feminist icon, yes queen, beehive. When it came to the Me Too movement, she didn't speak on it. And I'm not someone who I believe that like every celebrity should speak on every single thing. However, Beyonce had known people in her circle that were these abusers. There was R. Kelly. She had a manager that worked with her. It came out that he had reports of sexually assaulting multiple girls. Diddy, she has never come out and spoke against any of these people. And some of these people are in her direct inner circle. And then of course, let's look at Jay-Z. I already spent a video breaking him down, but Jay-Z has a well-documented history of violence, of manipulation, and deeply strategic partnerships. He shot his own brother at the age of 12, and he built an empire off of intimidation and silence. So this leaves Beyonce to be only one of two things. She is either a calculated co-pilot or a controlled asset. But either way, she's not clueless. People always say she's private as if that equals pure. And remember, she married Jay-Z in her early 20s after having a controlling relationship with her father and was probably groomed by Jay-Z. She stayed with him after multiple cheating scandals, and she has never publicly condemned anything. Not Diddy, not R. Kelly, not Harvey Weinstein, not Jay-Z. I'm sorry, that's not neutrality, that's control. But that's just what I think. I want to know in the comments what you guys think. Because in the end, Beyonce's story isn't just about talent, ambition, or even survival. It's about the cost of playing queen in a rigged kingdom. She's been framed as being the ultimate feminist icon, yet her choices reveal a woman navigating from the same chains she's claimed that she broke free from. Whether by trauma bond, strategic silence, or an obsession with controlling her image, Beyonce has mastered the art of appearing liberated while remaining tethered. But maybe that's the real Carter lie. Not that she's powerless. It's more about who does her power serve and who does it benefit. I will see you guys in the next one.